The desert was silent except for the distant roar of helicopters circling the valley. Dust swirled like ghosts, wrapping around the shattered remains of what had once been a forward operating base. Amidst the chaos, a team of 381 Navy SEALs found themselves pinned down, surrounded on all sides by an enemy force that had emerged from nowhere. Their radios crackled endlessly, and every attempt to call in support had been met with static or cryptic replies. The situation was dire, and the odds were against them. High above, in the cockpit of an A-10 Thunderbolt II, Captain Riley Hayes adjusted her flight suit and checked her instruments with calm precision. Riley had flown countless missions, but nothing like this. Reports had come in about a SEAL team trapped deep behind enemy lines, and she was the closest air support available. There was one problem. Her orders were explicit. No engagement without full clearance. No deviation from standard operating procedures. And yet, Riley's gut told her that waiting for permission would cost lives. She had a choice to make. A choice that could get her court-martialed or worse, but it could also save 381 men who were counting on her. The map on her screen lit up with red blips, each one representing a SEAL pinned down in the valley. Riley's heart raced, but her expression remained stoic. She thought about her training, every drill and exercise she had endured, every rule she had memorized. Rules were designed to protect pilots and soldiers alike, but rules did not account for impossible scenarios, for men trapped and bleeding and running out of options. She took a deep breath and engaged the targeting systems, calculating trajectories and strike patterns that could suppress the enemy long enough for the SEALs to escape. On the ground, the SEALs fought with everything they had. Gunfire echoed off the cliffs, and smoke from makeshift barricades rose in thick columns. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, the team leader, shouted over the gunfire, trying to coordinate a retreat. "Hold your position. They can't keep this up forever." But as minutes stretched into hours, morale began to falter. Ammo was running low, casualties mounting, and every second brought more enemy reinforcements. The team needed a miracle, and they needed it now. Then, through the radio static, a voice cut through like a beacon. "This is Captain Hayes. A-10 inbound. Stand by for close air support." For a moment, silence reigned. None of the SEALs recognized the voice immediately, and then someone muttered, "Is that a woman?" It was an unusual thing to hear in the theater of war, where most pilots were men, and expectations were rigid. But the SEALs didn't have time to dwell on that. If she was there, that meant someone had defied protocol for them. Riley maneuvered the A-10 low, skimming the rocky terrain, hugging the cliffs to avoid enemy radar and anti-aircraft fire. Her wings shivered under the stress of the maneuvers, and the roar of the engines felt deafening in her ears, but she pressed forward. She could see the enemy positions below, entrenched and firing relentlessly. Precision was everything. One miscalculation could turn the valley into a tomb for the very men she had come to save. She adjusted the targeting pod, focused on the enemy clusters, and began to engage. The first salvo hit perfectly, sending a wave of dust and debris into the air. Enemy fire faltered as they scrambled to understand what had just happened. Riley's fingers danced over the controls with mechanical precision, releasing guided munitions in quick succession. Each strike was calculated to suppress, not to annihilate, giving the SEALs the chance to regroup and move. On the ground, the team took advantage immediately, forming tighter defensive formations and inching toward the extraction point. Riley didn't stop. She flew low, drawing fire away from the SEALs, taking risks that no pilot was ever supposed to take. Anti-aircraft rounds whistled past her cockpit, and the thought of ejecting never crossed her mind. Every rule she had memorized in training screamed at her to retreat, but every ounce of her being was focused on the mission: save them. The SEALs, inspired by the presence of this lone pilot defying every protocol, pressed forward with renewed vigor. The extraction point was a small clearing, barely visible from the air. Helicopters were supposed to land there to pull the team out, but the enemy had anticipated this, and it was a killing zone. Riley made the decision to create a corridor. With meticulous timing, she strafed the enemy lines, then pulled up just enough to avoid direct hits, drawing the enemy's attention skyward. This allowed the SEALs to move through the valley in staggered formation, suppressing fire only when necessary to keep the enemy disoriented. On the radio, Jackson's voice cracked with urgency. "We're in position, Captain. We're moving to the extraction zone." Riley could see them now, tiny figures advancing amidst smoke and chaos. Her stomach twisted as she maneuvered the plane under fire, but she didn't let hesitation show. Every strike was calculated, every pass over the valley measured. She broke rules left and right. Rules about engagement altitude, rules about weapon deployment, rules about acting without direct orders, but none of it mattered in that moment. Only survival mattered. As the SEALs reached the extraction point, the helicopters descended under the cover of smoke. Enemy fighters tried to intercept, but Riley stayed in the air, a constant shield above them, her guns ripping through enemy positions with surgical precision. The SEALs scrambled aboard the choppers, wounded and exhausted, but alive. Jackson looked up at the sky, his expression a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. "Who is she?" he asked the co-pilot. "Some guardian angel," came the reply. The mission was not without cost. Riley's A-10 sustained damage, smoke trailing from one of the engines, but she managed to maintain altitude and return to friendly territory. When she landed, she was met with furious superiors demanding explanations. She had violated so many rules, risked her life unnecessarily, and yet, the alternative had been the deaths of 381 elite soldiers. She stood in the debriefing room, resolute, knowing that no reprimand could outweigh the lives saved. Back at base, the SEALs recounted the story of the mysterious A-10 pilot who had defied orders to save them. Her actions became legend within the unit, a story told with awe and respect. For Riley, the accolades were secondary. What mattered was the knowledge that every man she saw climb into that helicopter had another chance at life because she refused to follow orders blindly. The image of 381 men, battered but alive, remained etched in her mind. Weeks later, she received a commendation for bravery, though accompanied by a stern warning from command about disregarding protocol. Riley smiled faintly as she read the citation. They recognized her heroism, yes, but the real reward was intangible. It was in the faces of the SEALs who survived, in the letters from families expressing gratitude, in the quiet pride of knowing she had done what was right when rules would have demanded otherwise. Her story spread beyond the military. News outlets picked up the account of a female pilot who broke every rule to save an entire SEAL team. It became an emblem of courage, a testament to the idea that sometimes, leadership and valor require bending or even breaking the rules for a greater good. Yet, Riley never sought the spotlight. Her satisfaction came from knowing that when lives were on the line, she had made the decision that mattered most. In the end, the mission that could have ended in tragedy instead became a benchmark in military history. Riley Hayes was remembered not just for her skill as a pilot but for her unwavering moral compass, her refusal to let procedure outweigh humanity, and her ability to act decisively under impossible circumstances. Her story inspired countless young pilots, especially women entering a male-dominated field, proving that courage and conviction could change the course of events in ways rules never could. The desert returned to its silent state, the echoes of battle fading like a distant memory. Yet, the legacy of that day, the day a female A-10 pilot defied every order to save 381 SEALs, endured. Her name became synonymous with bravery, her actions a blueprint for what it means to lead when rules fail, and her story a reminder that sometimes, one person's courage is enough to turn the tide. Riley sat in the mess hall weeks later, quietly sipping coffee, listening to the chatter of soldiers recounting the mission. She didn't need accolades or medals, the gratitude and survival of those she saved were enough. And somewhere deep inside, she knew she would do it all again, because courage is measured not by following orders, but by knowing when to defy them for the sake of others. Her story, her courage, and her legacy live on through every SEAL who survived that day, and through every story told about the pilot who refused to watch men die when she could act. And for those listening now, remember this: sometimes, the rules are meant to guide, but the heart is meant to decide.